When Sean Spicer resigned last week as White House press secretary, we lost Melissa McCarthy's uncanny parody on Saturday Night Live, and we will miss her. But thank God there is a new impersonation to fill the void. Watch this send-up of Anthony Scaramucci.
I love the president, thank you. I love the president. I love it. I love you.
I love you.
I love you.
I love you.
I friggin' love you. Thank you. I'm going to fire so many people. I don't know who it's going to be, Reince, but I'm going to get to the bottom of the leakage in the White House. You hear me, Reince?
That's actor and comedian Mario Cantone. He's playing Scaramucci on Comedy Central's The President's Show. And Mario joins us now. Great to see you.
What time is it? What time do you kids get up in the morning? I don't know how you
us.
do this. This is brutal. I only got up for you, for him.
I know you
because
did.
he promised me sex. That's why I got up.
Oh, my God.
With you.
Thank you for the flowers.
By the way.
Thank you for the flowers, Chris. I appreciate it.
Well,
were you proud of me? He was tweeting. He was calling me at all hours of the night.
He loves your impersonation of
He was. Oh no, he was
Mooch.
giving me like advice. Like I was like, "Thank you, Stella Adler." Okay, Uda Hagen does.
But here's why. Because this is different than what you normally do. You are a brilliant performer. Everybody knows that. But the relevance to our political culture now, McCarthy wasn't just funny. It was about the window. Baldwin's not just funny. It's about the window that the satire doesn't have to be exaggerated to become comedy.
See, yeah, I know. You look at it beyond. You look at it very deeply because you're a political commentator. Look, let me tell you something. The day this happened, like when someone tweeted the comparison, I was lying in bed depressed. You know, I couldn't get out of bed. You know me, I sleep late. So all of a sudden that happened, and then another person did another. And I don't have a ton of Twitter followers because I leave it there like an abandoned amusement park. So I just I tweeted, I retweeted it, and then it went crazy. And then 4 days later, Anthony called me and said, "Will you do
Anthony
this?"
Adaminiak,
Yes.
who is Trump in The President's Show on Comedy Central.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But you so quickly channeled him. You
Tammany.
figured out Anthony Scaramucci so quickly. We have another clip. Let's play people, and then let's play it for people, and you'll explain how you did it. Watch this.
There's an old Italian expression my mother used to use when somebody hurt her. She'd say, "Stick the umbrella up my ass, but don't open it."
Wow!
I love ethnics.
And I love President Trump.
Because he does it, goes chump. Well, I'm Italian, and I know this guy. I just know.
You recognize that archetype.
I recognize him. You know, I got to tell you, when I listened to the phone, I mean, I saw the interview you did with him, Chris, and then because he forced me to, and he was like, I said, "What time's your show on?" He goes, "You don't know what time my show's on." I said, "I'm not up at 6 o'clock in the morning to look at your pretty face." Then he said, Chris, you tweeted me again. He said, "Look, listen, the phone interview is really interesting." So I listened to the phone interview, and halfway through it, I texted you, and I was like, "This is exhausting. It's draining." I said, "I know Italians repeat themselves, but this guy's taking it to a whole other level." Oh my God,
But I mean, he did say things like that. There's an old Italian expression.
Yo, well, he loves the Italian expression.
He really does.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, he did that a lot. He did. I just think he's. Yeah, it's
What
like,
do you think is so funny?
I just think, well, there was one moment in it that you didn't show, but
Is it too dirty?
No, it's not. It's my favorite thing, and no one really laughed at it. But when he said, they were talking about the theme of the show, because there's always a theme of the President's Show every week, and he said, "So tell him, it's Mooch, tell him the theme," and I went Joe Paterno, and so that happened with you. Oh, it was, yeah, and
he
then
did quote Coach Paterno.
And my favorite thing is just going, "Well, scusate me." Reality. I mean, scusate me is so like Italian. It's hilarious.
Do we have time for another clip, or do people have to watch online? All right, you guys have to watch online where Scaramucci slaps the president and says, "Snap out of it."
It's nice to be part of the political climate and part of this. It really is.
And I know you take it seriously as well as serious art.
Oh, I absolutely do. I do. Well, because, if I didn't, he'd come around and
That's right.
No, you've got a great talent. There's a void. And who could fill it better than you?
Well, look, I'm just happy that Anthony and Comedy Central and the President Show called me, because I love the show and I love doing it. And you got to strike while the iron's hot.
Absolutely.
Who knows if he'll be here in October?
Next week.
You know, we don't know. Well, I got to do it now.
We're going to enjoy it while you do it.
I got to take it for all it's worth.
Maria, thank you so much for
Good luck on your book. What's it called? Amanda wakes up with an erection. What's it called?
No.
Something like that.
Oh, my
Amanda
God.
Wakes Up. It is a touching and poignant novel that gives insight into journalism.
It's your new beach read.
Toss to the next show.
I'm terrible. See what Italians do? We
read that.
Forget it. I'm taking it from you. CNN Newsroom with Poppy Harlow and John Berman is going to pick up right after this break.
You're so great. Thank you for being here. Now, New Yorker reporting an interview with Anthony Scaramucci and Chris's interview yesterday with Anthony Scaramucci. I'll play you just one excerpt about how he seems to be very, very focused on the leaks coming out of the White House. That's his top of priority. And he told Ryan Lizza they'll all be fired by me. I fired one guy the other day. I have 3 to 4 people I'll fire tomorrow. I'll get you the person who leaked that to you, Reince Priebus. If you want to leak something, he'll be asked to resign very shortly. How's this playing out with the president's agenda?
I don't think it's playing very well. And Allison, I think this is emblematic of the problem the White House has had in terms of trying to have an impact on the president's agenda on Capitol Hill. The White House seems wholly consumed by that which bothers Donald Trump, the president. He doesn't like leaks, he doesn't like disloyalty, and the White House is singularly focused on addressing problems that annoy President Trump, and they've dropped the ball when it comes to presidential leadership on the Hill. And look, there's plenty of blame to go around. Mitch McConnell deserves blame. Senate and House Republicans collectively, even though House Republicans passed the bill, they're all a part of this mess at the end of the day. But the X factor in getting big things like this done is always the presidency, because it's the one adult in the room that can corral wayward members of a party, even possibly bring members of another party because of a national base of support. It's the one person in the room that was elected by the country and not by a state or a district. And in this case, President Trump has really been absent from the public stage in creating the public space for Senate Republicans to take the tough votes, to do things they may not want to do for, in a sense, the greater policy and political good from the point of view of Republicans when it comes to replacing and repealing Obamacare. And look at how vital Republicans really think repealing Obamacare is politically. Mitch McConnell's a very keen electoral operator. He looks at elections. They are always very important to him. And yet he was trying to jam his own members to vote for a bill that is very unpopular. And then when that failed, he was trying to jam them on a bill that would raise premiums 20% just to keep the process alive. That's how important Republicans believe repealing and replacing Obamacare is to their prospects in the 2018 midterm elections, that they were willing to do all of these things just to get to the next step. And it all came crashing down, and now they have to figure out what's next, and I don't think they know.
But it's all a window into what the original proposition's problem was. It was that the idea is not just to repeal or replace, to make better. And if you're going to raise premiums and if people are going to lose care, how is that better? Even Republicans had to own that on top of party loyalty. But all the roads lead back to the White House. There's a reason this was never called Trump Care. And it's not a good reason, right? Obamacare was called that because the president had a leadership role. Here, the president didn't seem to have one, and it raises the question of who gets blamed for that.
Well, and there were two factors here. One is, if you talk to lawmakers who spoke personally to Trump about this, he had some dinners in the White House, it was clear that he didn't really understand what was in his own bill. And I think that sent a worrying signal to a lot of lawmakers. The second thing is, publicly he would come out and threaten and lean on members like Dean Heller of Nevada, but then turn around and say that the same bill that he'd been threatening in the past was mean. So it wasn't clear where Trump wanted to go exactly. And the other problem is it's also clear that Trump didn't care particularly about health care policy, at least not as much as Russia, shutting down leak investigations. I mean, I thought Scaramucci's interviews with you guys yesterday morning and with Ryan Lizza last night or 2 nights ago were a real reflection of what is on Trump's mind. And health care, I'm pretty sure, was a subject that didn't come up in either of those interviews.
Yeah, so David Drucker, in terms of the White House Chief of Staff, I know that you're not in the prognostication business, but does Reince Priebus survive the next week?
That's a very good question. I think part of the lack of leadership coming from the White House has been that there has been no chain of command in addressing all of these priorities. Reince Priebus is going to get a lot of blame for the failure of health care. As Chris pointed out, he was brought in because he was the Washington guy that knew the players and could help facilitate things. But it all starts at the top. And when the president brings in a so-called communications director, and that communications director does not report up the chain of command to the chief of staff, but reports directly to the president and then starts going around the chief of staff, threatening to fire everybody, outing the chief of staff as he sees it as being a leaker. There's no way you can present a united front and work with your party on the Hill to actually get anything done, because Republicans on the Hill are looking at this chaos and they're saying to themselves, these guys don't know what they're doing, they can't be trusted, and if things go south, they're not going to have my back, because they don't even have each other's back. It's a war over there, and this is a big fail. And if the president wants to right the ship, he's got to decide who's in charge, create a chain of command, and he's got to then let people go through that chain of command, and he's got to tell everybody else to shut up. And in some ways, he should start with himself and make sure that his tweets, which do have an impact and have an ability to reach people, are more focused, more and more open towards pushing his policies and not towards pushing his own personal agenda.
It's, Scaramucci said what he said. He gave Lizza one heck of a story.
For sure.
But he, I think it's fair to say, is a symptom of the disease, not the disease itself. It's been going on for a long time in this White House. It seems the one thing that may bring the Republicans together right now is they've all been asking the president to stop going after their own. What he did to Jeff Sessions, stop the madness in his own White House. We'll see if he can get them to do it.
The day is young. Panel, thank you very much for all of the insights.
All right, so what is even a possibility when it comes to bipartisan work to deliver better health care for people? Isn't that what's supposed to be the goal? We're going to talk to a Republican congressman next.
And as I said, we look forward to our colleagues on the other side suggesting what they have in mind. So now, Mr. President, it's time to move on.
All right, that was Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell moments after a very dramatic vote on Capitol Hill. It happened early this morning, and there was a stunning no vote from Senator John McCain, sinking the GOP's effort to repeal Obamacare. What's next? Joining us now is Republican Congressman Scott Taylor of Virginia to talk about this and much more. Good morning, Congressman.
Good morning, Allison. How are you?
I'm well. I don't know what time you went to sleep, but what was your reaction when you saw John McCain get up and give that very dramatic thumbs down?
Well, I didn't see that. But obviously this morning I woke up to the news. But I'm certainly disappointed. Of course, what happened last night doesn't help the folks that are hurting under this law, businesses and individuals across the country, and certainly in my district. So hopefully we can work together and get something that addresses those issues.
Do you think that the turmoil in the White House that has been so colorfully outlined in places like the New Yorker, yesterday here, the new communications director, Anthony Scaramucci, kind of laid it out. Do you think that that has been getting in the way of successful legislation and the president's agenda?
At times, yes, of course. Listen, I think, I know that there was efforts, of course, from the White House to try to get some of these senators, of course, to get on board. And relationships matter, no matter where you are. No matter what form, whether it's business or in the private sector or in government, relationships matter. So there's no question about that some of that could hinder the ability to get successful legislation passed.
Look, I mean, if the chief of staff, Reince Priebus, is locked in a battle royale with the communications director, how can he be doing his job effectively?
Well, let me just say, I mean, obviously, if we want to do big things, if we want to do big things here in Congress, of course, we need a partner in the White House and certainly in the staff to help corral some of those folks and move things along. So there's no question if they're distracted in some way and not focused on doing things for the American people, then that could obviously hinder the ability to get successful legislation passed.
Let's talk about something that did come out of the White House this week. We should remind our viewers, you were a Navy SEAL, you're an Iraq War veteran. What did you think when the president tweeted out that he wants to ban transgender soldiers from the military?
Honestly, we were very taken aback because you shouldn't be pushing policy out, obviously via tweets. From what I understand, of course, we went right in to try to find out information from DOD, and they didn't really have the information either. So personally, I don't support the ban. I think that if someone is medically, physically, psychologically ready to serve and they meet all those standards, they should be able to serve. Now, obviously, there's one question in there in terms of paying for surgeries. Well, if you need to have that elective surgery, then you're not physically, psychologically ready to serve. And there's a standard there in the military, and that's something that there should be equality in standard for sure. But at the same time, if folks meet all the standards, then they should have the ability to serve the nation that we all love. So I was troubled by it. There's no question.
The president, one of his rationales that he said in the tweet was that the military, I'll just paraphrase it very quickly, cannot be burdened with the tremendous medical costs and disruption that transgender in the military world entail. That is not supported by the facts. Any sorts of medical costs for treatment are negligible.
Well, I have to push back a little bit on that because, yes, that is true in terms of overall budget and spending and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But again, the military is supposed to be a lethal, disciplined fighting force. And if you're not ready to serve, to come in and be ready to meet all those standards to serve, then you shouldn't come in. And that means if you have a medical ailment or anything,
of course, but I mean, why are you assuming that a transgender soldier has a medical ailment? I mean, or is not ready to serve?
All right, don't put words in my mouth like that, please. As I said before, if I don't support the ban on transgender. If they are ready to go, if you sign up for an enlistment, you sign up for enlistment for 3 to 4 years or whatever it is, but you come in, no matter who you are, and whatever it is, and then you decide or you want to be able to have surgery that puts you out of commission for up to a year and potentially precludes you from serving in some places where you're supposed to do, that's not fair. That is not fair to the soldiers that are on your left or your right. That is unacceptable to me. Now, that has nothing to do with the ban. That's a different thing, and I wouldn't use the words, okay, it's medical cost, but disruption, yes. You have to have equality and standard, and you have to have discipline to have a fighting force.
Yeah, of course.
So that's something that I don't support.
Of course.
But I don't support the ban either. If folks are ready to go, come serve.
So what does that have to do with the 4,000 transgender soldiers that are in the military?
Well, from what I understand, as I said, I didn't agree with the how that was rolled out, of course, in a tweet. And I did hear that that General Dunford said that they won't be affected, and good. They shouldn't be affected in that way because there's heroic, honorable service happening right now by folks who are transgender in the service right now. So I hope that continues, that they won't have disruption.
So why is the president doing this?
I can't answer that question. You'll have to ask him.
Why do you think, on a very busy week with health care in the fore, that the president would send out these tweets and focus on transgender soldiers?
Again, I can't answer that question. You're going to have to ask the White House. I have no idea, but I've told you my position on it.
And have you told the president or have you told the White House your thoughts as a veteran?
Well, I'm saying that here publicly on a national live interview with you, and we certainly put out a statement right away.
Yeah. Congressman Scott Taylor, thank you for your service. Thank you very much for sharing all of your thoughts on this with us.
No problem. Have a great day.
You too, Chris.
All right, so the Democrats have to figure out what they do going forward. The Republicans failed. You didn't see huge cheering from the Democrats. There are calls on both sides to work together. So what are the Democrats prepared to do? We have one of their senators who voted.
So, it's time for our friends on the other side to tell us what they have in mind. And we'll see how the American people feel about their ideas.
Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell turning to Democrats to offer their own ideas after the Republicans' last-ditch effort to repeal Obamacare failed. Let's discuss the way forward with Democratic Senator Ben Cardin of Maryland. He's a member of the Senate Finance Healthcare Subcommittee. Sorry. Good to have you, Senator. Thanks for being on the show. You're the one who stayed up late. I'm the one who can't speak.
Chris, it's good to be with you. Last night was pretty a dramatic moment. We were able to stop this train going in the wrong direction. Now it's time for us to work together to improve the Affordable Care Act.
All right. So state of play. You know, I test Democrats on a regular business. Where are your ideas? Why aren't you trying to get in there? And I understand the counters that you're not in the majority. You don't have the numbers and you don't believe in repealing the ACA. So why would anybody vote for that? Okay. But now you know where we are. And you did have Mitch McConnell do something that in this environment is unusual, which is to say, let's look to the other side. John McCain exhorting all senators to remember that that's the spirit of the senators working together. So what are the opportunities to do that, to create better health care for Americans? Because as we know, the ACA is far from perfect.
Well, neither party can do this on its own. We need everybody working together. So I'm encouraging the Senator Alexander, the chairman of the Health Committee, to convene hearings. We have proposals, Republicans have proposals that could bring down the overall cost of health care, stabilize the insurance marketplace, bring down the health insurance premiums. I could give you specific examples. I filed legislation dealing with some of the cost issues, dealing with prescription medicines to make it more affordable, dealing with more coordinated, integrated care models, so you're dealing with the patient.
That's where we need to go, Senator, because I think it is time for specifics, because one of the political dynamics here that needs to be satisfied is a quick win. All right? That's where the president's head is. Right or wrong, that's who you're dealing with. That's the leadership. So what do you think could get done in short order? Because when you say the word hearings, you know, that means that I'm going to lose hairline between when they start and when anything actually gets done. So what do you think can get done soon?
Well, the Senate's in session. We could have a hearing next week. Believe me, we could put hearings together quickly. But there is a reason for hearings. We believe public input is important. We also believe when you come up with a proposal, you should let it be aired. You should let people have an opportunity to understand it. Recognize that the last bill we voted on was shown to us 2 hours before we voted on it. Right. So let's have a more transparent process. There are proposals out there. I have filed legislation 4 or 5 weeks ago that includes 5 or 6 specific proposals that could help stabilize the insurance marketplace. These are not novel ideas. They've been around. Republicans are supporting these, want to make sure that insurance companies know the stability of the marketplace, so more have confidence to enter the marketplace. We could also make it more stable by having a public option available if there's not competition in a community. So there are things we could do working with Republicans quickly. I agree with you. I would like to get it done this year. I'd like to get things moving.
What do you make of the president's challenge to allow the ACA to implode? First, do you believe that that's a fair reckoning of the disposition of the healthcare system, that it is in a death spiral? And two, the notion that the president would, although he raised his hand and said, I'll faithfully execute the laws of the United States, he would allow this law to fail.
Chris, you're saying it exactly correct. The Affordable Care Act, no, it's not imploding. The Affordable Care Act has provided incredible help to millions of Americans who didn't have access to affordable health care before. It has improved dramatically quality insurance available, reined in the abusive practices of insurance companies. What the president is doing is unconscionable. He should be carrying out the laws of this country in a way to make them most effectively work. Instead, what he is doing, he is trying to say, look, I'm not sure whether I'm going to do what the law tells me to do on these payments to the insurance companies to stabilize the copays and deductibles, which causes insurance companies to say maybe I shouldn't stay in the marketplace. I'm not going to enforce the mandate, the president says. So therefore, healthy younger people don't feel like they have to buy insurance because they don't know if there'll be a penalty if they don't. That means the risk pools are greater. The insurance premiums are higher. The president is doing things that is making the market much more difficult, and that's just wrong.
So what about the fundamental issue of the individual marketplaces, largely in states that didn't expand Medicaid, that are underwater? They're too small. They have one choice. You know, sometimes that's it in a lot of these markets. Huge deductibles and premiums rising at ridiculous rates. What's the first thing that can be done to stop that bleeding?
Well, two things. First, have a public option, have a government plan that's available if there's not competition in that marketplace, so you know you have guaranteed coverage. Secondly, enforce the mandates so that the younger, healthier people come into the marketplace, so you have more people in the insured marketplace, the premiums go down, so that everybody is in the system. They're the two things you could do. And then lastly, make sure the insurance companies know they're going to get the payments that were included in the Affordable Care Act, so they can have lower copays and deductibles. That's what you could do immediately that would help stabilize the marketplace.
Well, up until this point, it has been the Republicans' show. They are in the majority. They were working to satisfy a campaign promise. That phase seems to be over. Maybe there'll be some dickering on block grants that the Republicans will try to move along the reconciliation process themselves. But now's the time to see who wants to step up on the bipartisan side. We will be watching. Thank you for being on the show to make the case.
Thank you, Chris.
All right, Senator. Allison.
All right, Chris, infighting appears to be consuming the West Wing. Anthony Scaramucci taking on Reince Priebus and Steve Bannon. Is President Trump's White House out of control? We have a debate you don't want to miss. Next.
In the New Yorker, you should read it. Have you been watching New Day? Well, if you haven't, you've missed the new comms director, Anthony Scaramucci, making his case to the American people that he was brought in by the president to do some things, and most of them start and end within the White House. So what happens there, and what does it mean to the president's agenda? Let's discuss with CNN political commentator and former senior communications advisor for the Trump campaign, Jason Miller, and former senior advisor to President Clinton, Richard Socarides. Now, fellas, unless you have the ability to curl up with a great book like Amanda Wakes Up by Alison Camerata, out now, you can buy your copy. I have 10. Unless you have the ability to do that, you must deal with reality. And the reality is, Jason Miller, it is Thunderdome in the White House. 2 men enter, 1 man leaves. How did it get to this point?
Well, Chris, I think one of the things to keep in mind here is that President Trump likes to surround himself with folks who are passionate and who love to mix it up and have these differing opinions and ideas. And he likes to see them hash it out and see which idea comes to the top or which opinion comes forward up to a point. And I think this is really the critical distinction here, is at a certain point, the president will look and say, this is becoming a distraction, or this is something that's getting in the way of our agenda. And then folks will find themselves on the outs, and that's not where you want to be. I think that things have gotten a little bit too heated over the last couple days. I think we saw from Anthony's comments last night that he probably went a little bit too far. But look, I think Anthony is a breath of fresh air that's coming into the White House. I love his focus on the leaks. I think he's going to be a great teammate. And I think all these guys just need to get on the same page here, because especially after these Republican turncoats shot down Obamacare last night, we got to get going on tax reform, and we can't dork around any longer.
Well, let's just talk about one of the operating assumptions here, which is the last few days it's heated up. My suggestion would be you've had a problem there for a long time. Socarides, you worked in close quarters like this. Have you ever seen anything like this, where it's not Scaramucci versus Reince? That oversimplifies it. Mooch just got there, Scaramucci. Yeah. This has been going on. You have who the family members attack, who attacks the family members, you know, who went after Jared, who is Jared trying to kill, Bannon versus Reince. Now they're together because Cohn is against them. We hear about it all the time. Have you ever heard anything like it?
Well, I don't think any of us have ever seen anything like this in the history of modern American politics, or the history of politics anytime in our lifetime, anywhere in the world. I mean, I think Jason has done a pretty good job of putting forth the White House talking points in terms of, like, well, the president likes to have a lot of people with differing views around him. And, of course, you hear that about a lot of presidents, right? But this is way beyond anything. I mean, the crazy thing is that we try to even talk about this in the context of regular business. But this is,
look at the cover of the New York Post.
The cover of the New York Post, right?
This is a friendly forum for the president, right? It's run by
Survivor White House.
And Jason, they have the cover as the Survivor White House with these little, you know, caricatures of everybody.
I mean, Chris, what seems to me is, though, like, where are the adults in this, and the real losers? I mean, we talk about who's going to win. Is it going to be Reince? Is it going to be Scaramucci? Who's going to come out on ahead? I think nobody wins this. I think actually, and the American people are the biggest losers. And when you look at what happened last night on the Senate floor with John McCain and Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins, I mean, those were real profiles in courage. And I think that if we look to John McCain today, we can see a way forward, that we have to start to work together. And somebody in Washington, it won't be President Trump, it won't be anybody in his immediate circle, but somebody in Washington has to step forward and say, this craziness cannot continue.
Well, courage to you, cowardice to Jason Miller, but all roads lead us back to the same place. You say the president likes different ideas. Is that too fair an assessment, Jason? Because is there a fair criticism that the president has been too okay with the blood sport, that he hasn't been a heavy enough hand or a good enough example of how to treat each other with decency, how to focus on the right things, how not to get distracted, how not to make it personal?
Chris, I disagree a little bit with the setup there. I mean, I think what the president wants to see is folks in his administration advocating for what he wants to get done and pushing his viewpoints forward. And let's go to Anthony Scaramucci for a moment here. I think the fact that he's been able to draw some attention to these issues of leaks that have really hamstrung this White House in a way that I haven't seen at any point in my professional life, I think has been a very good thing. And I think if he's able to do something and clamping down on those, whether that's some people have to get kicked out, whether that's just getting those to stop, I think that's a good thing. But going back to my earlier point, I mean, this is all about the American people and President Trump's agenda and how we go and move the country forward.
Chris, Jason, can I just interrupt you?
Give a quick button.
This is not about the American people. This is about who got invited to dinner on Wednesday night, and that's what makes this so crazy.
And I think, Richard, I think you're missing. I think you're missing my broader point here. Is that President Trump likes this competition of ideas, but he wants to see his agenda being implemented. And he wants to see strong people stepping forward to go and do that.
All right.
This is not a White House that I think is a good place for wallflowers. He definitely wants people who are aggressive, who can get out there and push that message. Now we need to make sure that that message is going to tax cuts, that it's going to infrastructure. Look, this president ran on and had a historic victory on some really big, important things. Now we need all of these people pointing in the same direction, and they can do it. Look, I've worked with Bannon, I've worked with Priebus, I've worked with Scaramucci. There's no reason that these three shouldn't be able to get along and all work on behalf of the president.
The question is, given that they should be able to, will it happen, and will they get the chance? Is someone going to be out because of what's been happening in that White House, and as early as today? We'll see. Jason, thank you. Richard, appreciate it. Allison.
Oh, Chris, is this your copy of Amanda Wakes Up?
I'm sorry.
Right here?
Did I leave that on your chair?
You did, but I know that you are engrossed in it. You are the best PR agent.
I hope that you were not distracted by all the dog-eared pages I have from the absolutely delicious language.
You are so wonderful. I will funnel my 10% of my salary to you. Now to the rainforests of South Asia and a CNN hero who has earned the nickname Papa Bear. His mission is to save the sun bear after realizing the key role it plays in keeping the forests healthy. Meet Suti Wong.
And as I said, we look forward to our colleagues on the other side suggesting what they have in mind. So now, Mr. President, it's time to move on.
Senator McConnell, not just tired after an all-night effort, but crestfallen. They failed the Republicans to get their own version of repeal and replace for the ACA. So now what? What does this mean to the president's agenda? What does this mean to Americans' ability to depend on health care? Let's bring back our panel. Perfect group of reporters for this. Ron Brownstein, Ryan Lizza, Phil Mattingly. Phil, so in a way, this sets us up for where we should have been all along, which is Republicans, you're in control, but you have to work with the Democrats. We know there are issues in the individual markets. We also know now there is a higher level of popularity for the ACA than we've seen since its inception. So fix what's there. Is that a reality?
It's a difficult dynamic. Look, there are Republicans who are game for this. There's a recognition that short-term stabilization, some type of funding mechanism for the marketplace right now, obviously the cost-sharing reduction money for the insurers, that needs to be settled as well. Lamar Alexander, who chairs the Senate Health Committee, has made clear he wants hearings on this. He's ready to move forward on a bipartisan basis. But, Chris, I think this is a really important component here. The baseline for Republicans that they've campaigned on is repeal. If repeal is not what they're pursuing, conservatives have made very clear they're not going to help fix something. They were never for fix. They didn't campaign on fixes. And so basically you would have to get individuals who've made very clear that is their only position here to modify that stance in order for people like Speaker Paul Ryan or Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell to ever bring something like that to the floor. Look, we've got a long process ahead of us. There is clearly going to be work done in both the Senate and the House at the committee level. Whether or not that can be raised to the idea where you actually pass something and then send it to the president's desk, it's an open question right now because there's just a lot of uncertainty whether conservatives would ever agree not to just come on board with something like that, but to allow it to even move through the process.
So, Ron, talk about the ripple effect, okay, of what happened last night. The tax reform, the success of the healthcare battle had a direct correlation to what happens with tax reform and the budget, et cetera, et cetera. So now where does this leave us?
Right. They wanted the dollars from health, from particularly the Medicaid cuts that would have resurfaced unquestionably in a conference committee as part of their tax reform. Look, it could have a rebound effect where you could see cutting taxes is easier for Republicans to coalesce around than retrenching a new entitlement that over 20 million people now depend on. So it is possible that they may rally around the idea of cutting taxes, although there is, again, a divide there on whether it is going to be revenue neutral and thus permanent, or a net tax cut and only last 10 years. I think on health care, I mean, the key question is, are you willing to stabilize the exchanges? Because what the problem has been in the individual market, as Chris pointed out, not in Medicaid. And in fact, the problem in the individual market has been worse in states that did not expand Medicaid. There are things you can do, but as Phil, I think, correctly points out, it's not clear that Republicans want to do them, which is an enormous roll of the dice because they are now running government. They ultimately, I think, will be accountable for outcomes. And if this totally torches on their watch, that could be an issue in 2018.
All right, one quick more beat on this. Ryan Lizza, the president's reaction, the president's posture, his recommendation, let the ACA implode. Let's put to the side for a second that there is misinformation and misperception that the ACA is in a death spiral. Let's just put that to the side because this is about politics, not necessarily reality. His sell is let it fail. That's a tricky dynamic for the steward of American well-being. Let it fail. You know, what would that mean? That would mean let people suffer, let care not be delivered. Is that a saleable proposition?
Well, I mean, just think of what the presidential oath is. The presidential oath is to take care that the laws are faithfully executed. And the idea that the president of the United States would tweet so glibly that as president, he is not going to support a law that is not just on the books, but an attempt to repeal it has just failed. So it's the law of the land. I think the real question is, does he mean it, and will he actually take affirmative actions to undermine the law? Because as you pointed out, Chris, it's not. You know, there was a lot of exaggeration about the death spiral of Obamacare. It has some serious problems that both Democrats and Republicans agree on, but it's not just going to collapse the way Trump says unless the federal government takes some affirmative actions to do that. So I think that's one major question is does anything from the White House then disappears and they no longer have this reconciliation process, this 50-vote process in the Senate. They won't have that anymore. So it really is the end of the line for getting this through the Senate on a 50-vote margin.
Hey, Phil, we have less than a minute. Next agenda item, the border wall. Mexico does not appear to be paying for it, and so there is a big budget item, $1.6 billion. Where's Capitol Hill on this?
The House is through. They got it done yesterday. Republicans were able to kind of insert it in the bill, not actually have to take a standalone vote on that issue, and were able to get it through, even though there were a couple of Republicans who were opposed to it. Here's the issue. Senate Democrats have made very clear they are not going to support anything that funds the border wall. The other issue is, when you're talking about this process moving forward, Senate Democrats are going to be needed to actually pass this. This is the appropriations process. It's not budget reconciliation. You need 60 votes to move forward, which means Republicans need at least 8 Democrats to come on board. So long as they hold firm on that, we've got a problem, and leadership has a problem. It'll be interesting to see negotiations play out going forward, but Senator Chuck Schumer, the Democratic leader in the Senate, has made very clear the border wall is the key issue that is their red line. They will not vote for anything that funds a border wall. So we are looking at another fight on appropriations when it comes to that issue. One of a series of very, very hefty fights to come. And guys, obviously the next big issue is tax reform. We'll see how that goes, but that's going to be a long and very complicated process as well.
But one little note for people, because we like to tell you what to look for going forward. The best indication that there's a chance that something positive can be done on health care on a bipartisan basis will be in the form of drug pricing. If you see Republicans and Democrats in the short term come out with something on drug pricing, because that's the biggest area of mutual agreement.
For sure. Gentlemen, thank you very much for all of that reporting. So, Politics Uncensored, White House Communications Director Anthony Scaramucci exposing not only a war in the West Wing, but a vulgar, rant-filled mindset in this interview. Ryan Lizza had it. He shares his extraordinary interview with us next. All right, so infighting and chaos appears to be consuming the Trump White House as there's this war between two of the president's top advisors, and it is now playing out in public.
At least two.
Sure. Okay, here's the picture if you need a visual of this.
Of two of them.
Of this standoff. There's tension between the White House Communications Director, Anthony Scaramucci, and Chief of Staff, Reince Priebus, in the Oval Office, and that photograph captures it.
Look, this is one of those rare moments where we now know what has been suspected. What's going on in this White House is atypical, and it is counterproductive. Yesterday, we had an exclusive interview with Anthony Scaramucci. He came on to explain what was going on, the frustration about leaks, the disorder. That's why he was brought in. The New Yorker's Ryan Lizza was on yesterday. On today, had a very big interview with Scaramucci, where Scaramucci went off in the interview with him about what was going on, how he felt about it. He used coarse language. So let's talk about this interplay of what's going on. And we got Ryan there. You see him on your screen. There are a couple things we got to discuss with this. One, let's deal with the substance, and then we'll deal with the reporting issues that the interview brings up. In terms of what you now know about what's going on in that White House, what do we know?
Well, we know that Anthony Scaramucci was not wanted in that role, that the Chief of Staff, Reince Priebus, and in most White Houses, the Chief of Staff, obviously the President always has the final word, but in most White Houses, the Chief of Staff is extremely influential and makes most of the big staffing decisions, or at least the President listens to him. And Reince Priebus did not want Anthony Scaramucci to come to the White House, and that's a dynamic that was going on for about 6 months. He blocked Scaramucci from meeting privately with the president, but finally Scaramucci got the president's attention and he got the job, despite Reince's objections. Yeah. We saw a press conference a week ago where Scaramucci tried to say things were papered over, and since then, since that week, there were a number of stories that came out that were critical of Scaramucci, and Scaramucci believed they all came from Reince. Yeah. So when he saw me Wednesday night report about a private dinner that Scaramucci and some others had with President Trump, for whatever reason, Scaramucci believed that that information came from Reince Priebus, and he called me to ask me about it.
Yes. And all hell broke loose.
That's where the interview started.
I think it's fair to say,
That's where the
Ryan.
interview started. He called me.
And for people who may have been in a hermetically sealed cave yesterday and somehow missed the news of your incredibly whatever, a lot of fireworks. I mean, I'm trying the word. I'm struggling for the word.
And she's an author.
So much.
You don't know how to say this in a nice way. Of
course. I will attempt to read a portion of the phone call.
Be careful.
That
one of our
kids
may be awake.
I tried this on air yesterday. It's not as easy as it looks.
I'm going to try it. Here's just a portion. Of what Scaramucci told you. Reince is a blanking, paranoid, schizophrenic, a paranoiac, Scaramucci said. He channeled Priebus as he spoke. Oh, Bill Shine is coming in. Let me leak the blanking thing.
Flipping?
And see if I can blank.
Check.
These people the way I blanked
Clock.
Scaramucci for 6 months. Chris is doing an excellent job of being my censor. Look, the point here is Scaramucci appears to be a volatile person. I don't know.
You've said if the president removes him, that you